Hi, my name is Justin and I'm with Ascend Finance. Today we're going to cover Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Indiana. Question I want to start with is, what percentage of Chapter 13 bankruptcies do you think actually end successfully, meaning you actually end up getting out of all the debt? Well, it's only 38.8%, sadly. Well, why? It's often related to cost and many other variables. So here's what we'll cover in this video. Number 1, a quick Chapter 13 bankruptcy introduction. 2, your monthly Chapter 13 plan payment. 3, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy costs in Indiana. 4, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process in Indiana. 5, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy pros and cons. And 6, and finally, Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives. Before we begin and I go any further, please understand a Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Indiana can be complex. So please don't hesitate to ask me any questions or leave a comment below, as we'll do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. Also, feel free to leave a like if you enjoy the video, as those are very encouraging for us to read. So let's cover a quick introduction. What is Chapter 13 bankruptcy? So Chapter 13 bankruptcy is known as a wage earner's plan because it allows individuals with a regular income to pay back some or all of their debts. The Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan is a monthly payment, often on a 3 or 5 year plan. People like Chapter 13 bankruptcy generally because it can stop wage garnishment, prevent foreclosure, and provide protection from creditors. One of the most important things to understand is the actual affordability of a Chapter 13 plan. Basically, how much you have to pay each month and how many years you're going to be in this plan. The reason that your Chapter 13 plan payment is so important is that it may actually be more expensive than your current debt obligations. Well, that being said, it could also be less expensive. It really depends. We get this question so much that we actually ended up building a free Chapter 13 calculator that's based on the actual bankruptcy forms. You can estimate your Chapter 13 plan payment below based on your zip code using the Indiana Chapter 13 calculator in the notes below. Now, let's discuss how your Chapter 13 plan payment works in Indiana, the various costs and fees, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy processes in Indiana, the pros and cons, and the alternatives. So let's talk about your Chapter 13 plan payment in Indiana. There are various factors of what goes in your Chapter 13 plan payment, so let's dive in. First, let's talk about the disposable income. The amount of your income you have each month after subtracting allowable payroll deductions and allowable living expenses from your gross monthly income is what can calculate to be your disposable income. On the government's means testing website, you can find the local standards for Indiana for housing, utilities, and transportation. Debts. So some debts must be paid in full through a Chapter 13 plan. Those are going to be priority unsecured debts like taxes, alimony, child support, administrative costs, while other creditors may receive only partial payments, while those are more so the medical bills, personal loans, and credit card debt. Something to also understand is Chapter 13 plans typically include back mortgage payments and car loan payments. Recent financial transactions. So some recent financial transactions could impact your Chapter 13 plan. Duration is also important to consider in a Chapter 13 plan. You're going to understand, are you eligible for a 3 or 5 year plan? Well, your average monthly income compared to the Indiana median income guideline is what's going to be used to help determine whether you qualify for a 3-year or a 5-year plan. Below and right here you can see is the median income guidelines for the Indiana for cases filed after May 15th, 2021. You can always use our calculator or check the government's means testing website for up-to-date data, as it tends to change every 6 months. Now, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy fees in Indiana. The main fees to consider in an Indiana bankruptcy is the Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney fee, trustee fee, filing fees, bankruptcy course, and miscellaneous costs. The Chapter 13 calculator below also counts for those fees, so let's cover those fees one by one. Attorney fees. The Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney fee in Indiana is estimated to be around $3,500. The fee may depend on a district, so a Chapter 13 attorney fee may be different from Fort Wayne to Evansville. Really depends on the district. Another Chapter 13 trustee fee. A Chapter 13 bankruptcy is often a 3 or 5 year plan, so there are many administrative tasks for a Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee. Here are the breakdown of Indiana Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee fees. As you can see, it ranges from 7% all the way up to 8.2%. just as a reference, just because this can result in thousands of dollars in trustee fees. Now, finally, the filing fee. The bankruptcy filing fee for a Chapter 13 case is around $313. The fee is paid to the bankruptcy court, and this is a national fee, not necessarily specific to Indiana, so just something to consider. Finally, we'll talk about kind of the miscellaneous fees, such as bankruptcy courses and even fees attached to getting to the court. So let's now cover the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process. The process is important to understanding when filing bankruptcy. So here are some questions to consider in the process to file. First, understand the different types of bankruptcies. So most folks will file a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, but it's important to know the differences. Chapter 7 is often cheaper and provides faster debt relief, but each has its own pros and cons. Second, understand which debts will be eliminated. Many unsecured debts are eliminated in a Chapter 13, but it's good to understand which ones are and which are not. Third, estimate your Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan payment. It's good to get an idea of what your 13 could look like for you specifically. 4, understand alternatives to filing Chapter 13 bankruptcy. The main alternatives to Chapter 13 bankruptcy are Chapter 7, debt settlement, debt management, and debt payoff planning. 5, determine whether to hire a Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney to file bankruptcy. 6, take a credit counseling course. 7, file bankruptcy petition and other forms. 8, a Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee is assigned to your bankruptcy filing. 9, attend the Chapter 13 bankruptcy court meetings. 10, take a second mandatory debt education course. 11, continue to make your Chapter 13 monthly plan payments. And 12, you'll receive your bankruptcy discharge. As you can see, there's a whole slew of steps in the process, but some of the processes are just understanding whether you'd like to file bankruptcy or not. The 5th, let's go over the Chapter 13 bankruptcy pros and cons. We'll first cover the pros and cons, First pro is it can prevent foreclosure so that you can keep your home by catching up with the past due mortgage payments over 3 to 5 years. Another pro, it can stop wage garnishments, seizures, levies, or any debt collection lawsuits. Pro, it can stop creditor harassment. Another pro, it can stop wage garnishments I was saying before. You may also get a discharge on a second mortgage through a Chapter 13. Another pro, you may be able to pay less than what you owe to satisfy the secured lien on your vehicle. Another pro, catch up on past due child support and alimony. Another pro could be getting rid of unsecured debts for pennies on the dollar. You may be able to resolve tax debts and IRS problems. And finally, another pro would be that you can protect property from being sold to pay the debts. Now, let's cover the downsides. One con is the cost of the Chapter 13 bankruptcy can sometimes be expensive. And it's often 3 or 5 years. It can have a negative impact on your credit score, and it can reflect negatively on your credit report as well. 2 other cons are, first, low payment flexibility. It may have a difficulty variability of what your payment would look like. And finally, your monthly plan payment can increase if your income increases. Now we have an idea of the pros and cons. I want to jump into Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives. So now let's cover the common Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives in this video here. So first, let's cover Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So Chapter 7 bankruptcy is often the least expensive option and the fastest form of debt relief. You can get rid of debt relief in as little as 120 days, and there's no Chapter 13 trustee, and the attorney fee is also a lot less expensive because the cases are less complex. Many people file a Chapter 7 when they qualify and are not at risk of losing any belongings in the bankruptcy. Second, let's cover debt settlement. So debt settlement is where a company or you negotiate and settle debt with your creditors. The goal is to reduce the payment burden of all your debt by around 50%, which will help lower your monthly payment, thus providing debt relief. There are definitely pros and cons of debt settlement, so definitely do your research. Third, let's cover debt management. Debt management is often where a nonprofit credit counseling agency negotiates the interest rate on your current debt. They may negotiate a high interest credit card on a 25% interest rate down to 9%. The goal is to reduce your monthly payment. You may also be on a 3 or 5 year payment plan. I hope this video has been helpful in your understanding of filing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. You can visit the Chapter 13 bankruptcy calculator below to estimate your planned payment. Did you learn anything, something new from this video? Please click the subscribe button, as we're going to put more and more videos out to hopefully help you make the most informed decision. Now, I'd like to turn it over to you. What are some questions you have about filing Chapter 13 bankruptcy? Please comment below, and I'll do my best to respond as quickly as possible. Thanks for watching.